You grip the ball, you take your 4 steps, you let it go, and you watch it drift into the gutter again while the young folks 2 lanes over are knocking down strikes without even trying. You feel it in your shoulder that night. You wonder if your bowling days are quietly slipping away from you. They are not. I promise you they are not. The truth is that almost everything most of us were taught about bowling was built for a strong 25-year-old arm, and nobody ever bothered to hand us the quieter methods, the ones that let a 70-year-old outscore a 40-year-old without throwing any harder. Those methods got buried under decades of people shouting, "Throw it faster." I found 12 of them, and the last one comes straight out of a coaching manual from 1969 that most bowling alleys today have never even heard of. It works on the same body you have right now, on the same lanes at your local alley, with the same ball you already own. Stay with me, because I still remember the exact Tuesday morning, an empty alley, lane number 7, when the old man sweeping the floor stopped, looked at my sad little roll, and told me the first of these secrets. I raised my average by 30 pins that month, and I never threw any harder again. Let me start with the thing that old sweeper told me, because it changed everything, and it costs nothing. I always thought I was supposed to look at the pins. It seems obvious, doesn't it? You want to hit the pins, so you stare at the pins. That is what I did for close to 40 years. And my ball wobbled all over the lane because the pins are 60 feet away, and no human being can aim accurately at something 60 feet away while swinging a heavy object. Here is what he showed me. About 15 feet down the lane, past the foul line, there are 7 little arrows set into the wood. Bowlers call them the arrows or the darts. They have been built into regulation lanes for generations, and most casual bowlers have no idea what they are for. You are not supposed to aim at the pins at all. You are supposed to aim at those arrows because they are close, and your eye can lock onto a close target with far more accuracy than a far one. Snipers, archers, dart players, they all know this. The closer your aiming point, the tighter your grouping. He told me to stand so the ball lined up with the second arrow from the right if I was right-handed, and just roll the ball over that arrow and forget the pins existed. I felt ridiculous. But the ball rolled true, dead over that arrow, and curved right into the pocket. That is the gap between the head pin and the pin beside it, the spot that gives you strikes. My very next roll knocked down 8, the one after, a strike. And I had not changed my arm, my ball, or my strength one bit. I had only changed where my eyes were pointing. This is called spot bowling, and professional bowlers have used it since at least the 1920s. Aiming at the pins is called pin bowling, and it is what beginners do. Nobody ever told me the difference. That alone is worth the price of a whole season, and I got it for free from a man with a broom. But aiming at the right spot does you no good at all if the ball is too heavy for you to control it, and that is the mistake I see almost every senior at the alley making, so let me deal with that next. For years I bowled with a 15-pound ball because a man at the pro shop, back when I was much younger and stronger, told me that heavier balls hit harder and knocked down more pins. And that was true for the person I used to be. The problem is, I kept using that same 15-pound ball long after my shoulder and my grip had changed. My swing got shorter, my release got early, my accuracy fell apart, and I blamed my age. Here is the rule almost nobody tells older bowlers. The old guideline was to use a ball about 10% of your body weight, but that guideline was written for younger, stronger bodies. For us, the real question is not how much you weigh. It is whether you can hold the ball straight out in front of you, at arm's length, for a slow count of 5, without your arm shaking or your wrist buckling. If you cannot, the ball is too heavy, full stop. It does not matter what you used to throw. When I dropped from 15 pounds down to 12, something remarkable happened. My backswing came back to full length. My arm swung like a smooth pendulum instead of a struggling lift. And because I could actually control the ball, it hit the pocket at the right angle, and a ball that hits the pocket clean at 12 pounds knocks down far more pins than a 15-pound ball that arrives crooked and weak. My average went up, not down. There is real science behind this. The energy that scatters pins comes from a combination of weight and speed and, most of all, a clean roll into the right spot. A lighter ball you can actually swing freely often arrives with more useful energy than a heavy one you are fighting the whole way down. I wasted years, and a lot of sore nights believing more weight meant more pins. But the ball weight is only half of the grip problem, because even the right weight ball will wreck your hand if the holes are wrong, and that is the quiet injury nobody warns you about. I want you to look at your thumb tonight. If you are a regular bowler, and your thumb has a callus, or it aches after a game, or you find yourself squeezing to keep the ball on, your holes are almost certainly wrong for your hand. And here is the part that shocked me. Our fingers actually change size as we get older, and they change size during the day. Arthritis, swelling, the weather, all of it changes how your thumb fits that hole. For decades I used house balls, those scratched up balls on the racks at the alley, and I grabbed whatever one had holes close enough to jam my fingers into. That is why the ball would hang on my thumb at release and yank my whole arm offline. A ball that does not release cleanly off the thumb will never roll straight, no matter how good your aim is. I did not have a bad arm, I had a bad fit. The fix that changed my hand was learning about the fingertip grip versus the conventional grip, and about a thing called span, which is just the distance between the thumb hole and the finger holes. When I finally had a ball drilled to my own hand at a pro shop, the man measured my span while my hand was relaxed, not stretched, and he drilled the thumb hole just slightly loose, so the ball would fall off my thumb on its own. That clean release is what lets the ball roll instead of skid. It cost me around $60 to have an old ball re-drilled, and it saved my hand and added easy pins for years. But if a new ball is not in the cards for you, do not click away, because the next trick fixes bad house balls for pennies, and almost nobody at the alley knows it. Here is what I do now when I have to use a house ball, and it costs less than a cup of coffee. I carry a small roll of white athletic tape, sometimes called bowler's tape, though any thin cloth tape works. When the thumb hole on a house ball is a little too big and my thumb rattles around in there, I stick 1 or 2 strips of tape inside the front of the thumb hole. Now the ball fits snug on the way in but still releases clean on the way out. That one adjustment turns a useless rack ball into something I can actually control. And there is a second cheap fix for the opposite problem. When the hole is a hair too tight and grabs my thumb, a tiny bit of talcum powder, or even the powdered rosin they sell at the counter, lets my thumb slide out smooth at release. The whole idea is that your thumb must exit the ball first, cleanly, before your fingers roll off the bottom to give the ball its turn. If the thumb sticks even for a fraction of a second, the ball goes nowhere good. This is knowledge that used to pass from bowler to bowler in the leagues, hand to hand, back when nearly everyone bowled in a league. In the 1950s and 60s, bowling was one of the biggest participation sports in the whole country, and the old-timers taught the young ones these fit tricks as a matter of course. When the leagues thinned out, that hand-to-hand teaching mostly stopped, and a whole generation of us started bowling with no idea that a 50-cent piece of tape could fix what we thought was a failing arm. But even a perfectly fitted ball will betray you if your timing is off, and timing is the single thing I got most wrong for the longest time, so let me confess that one next. For most of my life I thought bowling was about the arm. Swing the arm, throw the ball. I completely ignored my feet, and my feet were sabotaging me the entire time. The classic delivery is 4 steps, and the secret is that your arm and your feet must move together like a machine, not separately. What I was doing was walking to the line, stopping, and then heaving the ball with my arm from a dead standstill. All the power came from my shoulder. which is exactly the joint that hurts the most as we age. And none of it came from my body's natural motion. Here is the timing that a coach finally drilled into me, and I want you to picture it slowly. On a four-step approach for a right-hander, the ball pushes out away from your body as your right foot takes the first step. The ball swings down and back as your left foot takes the second step. It reaches the top of the backswing on the third step, and it swings down and releases as you slide on that fourth step. The left foot, push out, down, back, and release. Match to right, left, right, slide. When I finally got my arms swinging in rhythm with my walk, the ball started to feel weightless. Think about that shoulder aching after every game, that early release, that heavy ball you have been muscling down the lane for years because nobody ever showed you the pendulum. That ache is not old age. It is missing knowledge, and I gathered all of it into the Senior Bowler's Complete System, a set of books that lands in your email the moment you get it. It teaches you to listen to your body and decode the warning signals before they turn into injuries, to pick a ball weight that stops you fighting your own equipment, and to grip the ball in a way that protects your wrists and your fingers so you can bowl again without the ache. It carries you all the way from your warm-up to your final frame, session after session, pain-free. And here is something you can test tonight, for free, with the swing I just described. Hold the ball out at arm's length for a slow count of 5, and if your arm shakes or your wrist buckles, that ball is too heavy, plain and simple. That one check will tell you more than any pro shop ever did. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description, or the pinned comment. These are proven techniques built for bowlers 65 and older, respecting what your body can actually do right now. But even a smooth, weightless swing leaves points on the table if you are throwing the ball the old way, so stay right here. I was not lifting it or throwing it. I was letting it swing like a pendulum on a grandfather clock, and gravity was doing the heavy work for me. My speed came from my moving body, not my aching shoulder. And the beautiful part for an older bowler is that this actually protects your joints, because you stop yanking and start flowing. The single biggest fix inside that was to slow down my first step and let the ball drop into the swing on its own. I used to rush. Rushing throws the whole rhythm off and forces the arm to catch up by muscling the ball. When I slowed the start, everything else fell into place. But even perfect timing leaves points on the table if you are throwing the ball the way I was taught as a child, straight and flat. So let me show you the small change that makes a ball actually bite into the pins. Now, I know exactly who has been thinking this whole time that these tips are for someone younger, someone with a strong swing, someone who can still throw a hook and slide across the floor like the folks on television. Maybe your knees do not bend the way they used to. Maybe you cannot take a 4-step slide without worrying about falling. I made this next part especially for you, because everything I am about to tell you can be done standing nearly still, with almost no swing at all, and it will still raise your score. If your legs are not steady, you do not need the full 4-step approach at all. You are allowed to plant your feet, take one small step, and simply swing the ball. A controlled 1-step or even a no-step delivery from a stable, balanced stance is completely legal and completely effective, and because you are not moving your body, you actually have an easier time being accurate. I have watched bowlers in their 80s, standing almost flat-footed, roll clean pockets all night, using nothing but a smooth pendulum arm swing and good aim at the arrows. And here is the tool that too many proud folks refuse to use, and I wish they would let go of that pride, because it kept me from enjoying the game for years. The bowling ramp, and the lightweight balls, and even the little pushing sticks are not cheating, and they are not only for children. Many alleys keep a ramp behind the counter if you just ask. You set the ball at the top, you aim the ramp at your target using those same arrows I told you about, and you give it a gentle push. People with almost no strength at all, people in wheelchairs, people with hands that can barely grip, are out there bowling real games and beating people half their age because they aim the ramp at the arrow, not the pins. There is no shame in a tool that keeps you in the game you love. The only real loss is quitting. There is one more no-strength trick in this section, and it is about your stance. Stand with your knees just slightly bent, not locked, and keep your eyes on your target arrow the entire time, even after the ball leaves your hand. Do not lift your head to watch the pins. Watching the ball go over your arrow and holding your finish pose for a second like you are posing for a photograph keeps your body from pulling offline at the last instant. That single habit, holding your finish, fixed more of my crooked rolls than anything else, and it asks nothing of your legs or your strength. But now, let me come back to that hook I mentioned, because a ball that curves is the difference between hoping for a strike and expecting one. For most of my life, I threw a straight ball, flat and hard, right down the middle. And a straight ball has a real problem. When it hits the head pin dead on, the pins fly in a way that very often leaves you standing there looking at a split, 2 pins far apart, the worst thing in bowling. A ball that comes in at even a small angle, curving into the pocket, mixes the pins much better, and gives you far more strikes. You do not need a big dramatic hook. I want to be clear about that, because the giant hooks you see on television take a strong wrist and years of practice, and that is not us. What we can do is a small, gentle curve, and the secret is in the release, not in strength. As the ball comes off your hand at the bottom of the swing, imagine you are shaking hands with someone, and let your thumb come out first, while your 2 fingers stay in a hair longer, and roll up the side of the ball like you are turning a doorknob just slightly, from about 4 o'clock toward 12 o'clock if you picture a clock face. That gentle lift and turn puts a roll on the ball that makes it curve. The old-timers had a saying, lift and turn, and they meant exactly this small motion, nothing violent. Just letting the fingers do a little work at the very end. When I first got even a small hook working, my strike count jumped, because now I was coming into the pocket at an angle instead of straight on. And here is a gift for those with weaker hands. They now make reactive and even simple plastic balls, and there are wrist supports, a brace you wear that holds your wrist firm so your fingers can do that little turn without your wrist collapsing. That brace let me keep a small hook long after my wrist wanted to quit. But the hook only matters on your first ball, and the truth that took me years to accept is that games are not won on first balls at all. They are won on the pins you pick up second, and that is where I was throwing away the most points of all. I used to think the whole game was about strikes. Big, loud, satisfying strikes. And I ignored the boring truth, which is that consistent bowlers win by picking up their spares, by knocking down whatever is left standing after the first ball. A bowler who gets even 8 or 9 pins on the first ball and then always picks up the rest will crush a bowler who mixes a few strikes with a bunch of open frames. Spares are where the quiet, steady points live. Now here is the trick that felt like being handed a cheat sheet. There is a spare shooting method that has been taught for generations, called the 3-6-9 system, sometimes the 2-4-6, and it takes all the guessing out of picking up spares. It is a simple way of moving your feet on the approach depending on which pins are left, while you keep aiming at the same arrows you already trust. Let me give you the heart of it in plain terms. When you throw your first ball, you note the spot on the approach where you stand for a strike shot. Now, if pins are left standing on the right side of the lane, for a right-hander, you move your feet a set number of boards to the left, and you still roll over your target arrow. If pins are left on the left side, you move to the right. The lane floor is marked with little dots and boards, 39 boards across, and you simply shift by a counted number of them. The angle you create by moving your feet, while keeping your aim on the arrow, sends the ball across the lane to exactly where those leftover pins are standing. The very simplest version, the one I use, is the corner pin fix. When I leave that lonely pin way over on the far right, the 10 pin, I move my feet several boards to the left and roll straight over my usual arrow, and the ball travels across and takes it out. When I leave the lonely pin on the far left, the 7 pin, I move several boards to the right and do the same. Once I stopped guessing and started moving my feet by a set amount, my spare percentage climbed and my scores climbed with it, because I was no longer donating those single pins to the scorecard. This system was written down and taught by coaches through the middle of the last century, when league bowling was at its peak, and every serious bowler learned it as a matter of course. It got lost to casual bowlers the same way everything else did, when the leagues faded. But the spare system depends completely on the lane underneath you behaving in a predictable way, and here is the thing nobody tells the recreational bowler. The lane is not the same from morning to night, and if you do not know what I am about to tell you, the lane itself will quietly ruin your game while you blame your own arm. Here is something that took me an embarrassingly long time to understand. Bowling lanes are coated with oil. Not the whole lane, and not evenly. There is a pattern of oil laid down on the front part of the lane, and the back part near the pins is usually dry. You cannot see it with your eyes. And that invisible oil controls everything your ball does. Where there is oil, your ball skids and goes straight. Where the lane is dry, your ball grips and curves. So a ball that is skidding through the oil in the front will start to hook once it reaches the dry wood near the pins. This is why your ball might behave one way early in the day and completely differently later, and why the same throw can hook beautifully one game and go dead straight the next. The oil gets pushed around and carried down the lane by every ball that rolls, so the pattern changes hour by hour. When I finally learned this, so much of my frustration made sense. On a freshly oiled lane, first thing in the morning, my little hook would not grab at all, and I could not figure out why. Then in the afternoon, after the oil had been carried down and broken up, that same throw would hook too much and cross past the pocket. I was not getting worse. The lane was changing under me, and I never knew it was even there. Here is how you use this instead of fighting it. If your ball is hooking too much, move your starting position and your target to play the ball straighter or aim more toward the outside. And if it is not hooking enough, look for the drier part of the lane, usually farther outside near the edge, and send it out there where it can grip. Most house lanes have what bowlers call a house shot, an oil pattern that actually helps you because it is oiled heavier in the middle and drier on the outsides, which means a ball sent toward the outside tends to funnel back toward the pocket for you. Once you know the oil is there, you stop blaming yourself and start reading the lane like a map. But knowing the oil is there leads straight to the single most overlooked adjustment of all, the one that fixes more senior bowler scores than anything, and it is the one thing I want you to remember above all else, so let me save the best for last. Here is the secret I promised you, and it comes out of a coaching philosophy that was written down in a bowling instruction manual back in 1969, from the era when American bowling coaches were codifying everything they knew before the knowledge scattered. The organization that became today's national bowling body traces its roots all the way back to 1895, and by the late 1960s, coaches had figured out something about speed that runs completely opposite to what every casual bowler believes. And it is this. For an older bowler, throwing the ball slower and smoother almost always scores better than throwing it hard. I know how wrong that sounds. Every instinct tells you a faster ball hits harder and knocks down more pins. But here is what those coaches documented and what the physics actually shows. A ball thrown too fast skids across the oil and reaches the pins before it has a chance to start rolling and hooking, so it hits flat and weak and leaves splits. A ball rolled at a smooth, moderate speed has time to grab the dry back end of the lane, start its roll, curve into the pocket at an angle, and transfer its energy into the pins in a way that sends them tumbling into each other. Slower, rolling, angled energy scatters more pins than fast, skidding, flat energy. And the way you get that smooth speed is the very thing our bodies are built to do as we age. You let the ball swing like a pendulum and let gravity set the speed instead of muscling it forward. The old coaches taught that the perfect swing uses no added muscle at all on the downswing. You lift the ball into the backswing, and then you simply let go and let it fall and swing through on its own weight. Gravity throws a more consistent, more accurate, better rolling ball than your tired shoulder ever could. When I stopped trying to throw hard and started letting the ball fall through a relaxed swing, aimed over my arrow at a moderate speed on the outside part of the lane where it could grip, my average climbed higher than it had been in 30 years. I was not stronger. I was 70-some years old, and I was outscoring men in their 40s who were heaving the ball as hard as they could and leaving splits all night long. They had power. I had knowledge that they never got handed, knowledge that was written down more than 50 years ago and then quietly forgotten by everyone but a few old coaches. That is the whole secret in one sentence. Bowling is not a game of strength. It is a game of aim, timing, a clean release, reading the oil, and letting gravity do the work. And every single one of those things gets better with age and patience, not worse. So here is what I want you to carry with you out of all this. You were never getting weaker at this game. You were only missing the quiet knowledge that used to pass from one bowler to the next, hand to hand, in crowded leagues that mostly disappeared, and nobody ever handed it to you. It was set aside not because it stopped working, but because it was easier to sell people a heavier ball and tell them to throw harder. You are exactly the kind of person this was made for. The sort who would rather understand why a thing works than just throw money and muscle at it. The sort who trusts a smooth swing over a loud one. Now you hold what those old league bowlers knew. Tell me one thing in the comments, and please do actually write it, because I read them, and this audience helps each other more than any coach could. Which surprised you more, that you should aim at the arrows 15 feet away instead of the pins, or that throwing the ball slower will raise your score? Type it out, even just a word or two. I want to know which one you are going to try first at the alley. And if you want more of these forgotten skills, the quiet methods that used to pass from person to person before they got buried, come along with the rest of us who are digging them back up. Next time I am going to show you the truth about bowling shoes, and the one thing about that little slide sole that is quietly wrecking the balance of nearly every senior bowler, and how to fix it in 10 seconds before you ever step on the approach. I'm so glad you stayed to the end. This video gave you the overview, but inside the Wise Living Circle, I walk you through all 12 hacks, including that 1969 secret, step by step. If something isn't clicking, you can ask me directly, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. To join, just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime. Now that your average is climbing, let's fix the one thing holding you back. In this next video, I'll show you the right way to hold the ball, so your hand stays comfortable and your shots stay smooth. It's starting right here.